like this guy. And you can see here these areas where we've worked with the toning and on around. The feet, I just painted black, and then I highlight them again using a little white paint with just a little tiny bit of blue marked in there, sort of make it look like it's reflected from the sky. For the whiskers, I took an old paintbrush and cut off some bristles and put in there, and just take a little needle and drill a tiny little hole in the muzzle. It doesn't have to go in very far. And then take a bristle, mix up some epoxy glue, and just stick the end of the hair in the epoxy while you're holding it with a pair of tweezers, and then just stick it in the hole and hold it until it dries. Don't put a lot in. Usually half a dozen on each side is all that you really need to give the effect. And that's your red fox. You can use the same painting technique on just about any other type of animal, and it works especially good with the wild animals that have sort of nice, thick, rich coats. And that's our fox. I think you'll enjoy this project. Try it. It's a lot of fun. Well, I'd like to thank you for dropping by today. I've had a very pleasant time. And until next time, I'm Rick Butz wishing you happy carving.
Rick Butz has written 2 books entitled Woodcarving Step by Step, Woodland Creatures and Santas. Rick demonstrates and describes through extensive illustrations and photographs how to carve a chipmunk, a river otter, a red fox, an alpine St. Nicholas, an Adirondack Santa and his bear, and a Swiss St. Nicholas. The 2-book collection is available by calling 1-800-950-9648. The price is $29.90 plus shipping and handling.
Hi, I'm Rick Butz. Coming up next on wood carving, we'll be making this wood block print. So don't go away. Hi, come on in. My name is Rick Butz. Welcome to wood carving. Today I'd like to show you how you can take your carving tools and make a wood block print. Now that's a fairly simple procedure in theory. You take a piece of wood, put some ink on it, put a piece of paper on it, and then pull it off. Anything that you don't want to have ink, you carve away, and that makes the white areas. This is a monochrome woodcut that was given to me as a gift, and I kind of like it. It shows an old woodcarver and his cat sitting by the kerosene lantern. And it's something that has been done for centuries. What we're going to be working on today is something a little more elaborate. I got carried away and decided to do one in 3 colors. And this is what we'll be doing today. Now it's not quite as complicated as it seems. What I did was, to make the different colors, I carved out the areas that I wanted the color to show on. In this particular case, I left the blue borders, and then I put the ink on it, put my paper on it, and then pressed it down. Then I peel it up, and that gives me the blue image. Everything's kind of reversed from left to right, though, so you have to remember that when you're doing your drawing. For the red, I just left a couple of spots here, put the ink on it, and that's the red color. What we're going to be working on today is doing the rest, the black. And this is going to be our orca. This is something that has been done since the days of the ancient Egypt, and it's a really neat way to make something with your carving tools that you can reproduce easily. What I was doing when you came in was I was just finishing up tracing my design on my piece of wood. One of the things, if you're going to be using different colors, you have to make sure that your patterns and your paper all kind of line up. So what I did was, with my drawing, I made a little mark here and stuck a push pin in there. So when I carved the other blocks, I could just push the pins down here, and that way, if I have this holes the same distance in my paper when I lay it down on the ink, everything should theoretically line up. We'll see. I used carbon paper to trace my design through, and this is what we come up with. Now, carving it is basically you're doing a relief carving, and it's kind of fun. Traditionally, they use special tools for this, and the tools that they use were called palm tools, and they're very short little tools that fit into your hand. And this is the type that the woodcutters would use, or wood engravers would use. And they come in the same shapes. We have one here that's a V-gouge, and you can use it just to kind of work around the shape. And these are great for working in the small areas. I think, because I'm more used to them, I'm going to use my big tools. You don't have to take it down too deep. Now, woodblock printing is something that, most of us have done in grade school or junior high or as a craft project. And we think, oh, that's kind of cute. You make a little design in some linoleum or something and give it away for Christmas presents. And we kind of think, well, that's kind of cute and kind of neat. And actually, it's a lot more significant, because originally woodblock prints were used in, as I say, in ancient Egypt, to put decorations on cloth. And they did this in Europe too for several centuries. And that way you could get a sort of a cheap tapestry fast. But something happened in the 1400s. Paper came to Europe. Now you have to understand, looking back at the situation, the only way people had books, or the way anything was reproduced, was you'd have a monk or a scribe who would sit and hand letter and hand draw all these things onto parchment. Very labor intensive. As a matter of fact, the books were so expensive that they were kept under lock and key in the monasteries or in the churches or whatever. It was not available to just anyone, just because of the value. So what happened was paper came to Europe, and they found that you could take and make a carving in wood, put ink on it, put paper on it, and voila, you had your very first copy machine. Now that doesn't seem like a whole lot to us, but this was the cutting edge of technology. This was a laser printer of its day. And I know a lot of people now, they get a little intimidated by the changes that are coming on with the computer age and all the things that are happening in the technology, and the changes are going on so fast, and people are getting a little scared and get a little nervous. And I'm one of those myself, so I'm not putting anyone down. Well, exactly the same thing happened in the 15th century. And then there's this guy called Gutenberg, and you've all heard the story about how he was carving out a page for a book, and they would carve every letter in this block of wood. And his tool slipped. He wiped out some letters. So as the story goes, he thought, hey, listen, why don't I just cut this up and take each letter and then put it onto another block and have movable type. And he did. And that started a technological revolution. He invented the printing press and the movable type in the year think it was 1540, thereabouts. By the end of the century, there's over 1,000 print shops in Europe. And what that did was now everybody had access to the printed word. And a lot of changes came. It changed the way people thought about themselves. It changed the way they learned. It changed the way they felt about, well, they could understand more about the religious scriptures, political thought. And it's really one of the things that kicked the Renaissance into gear. And it was kind of scary. A lot of people, they couldn't understand where all these books were coming from. I've read accounts, and they say that people just didn't understand how all of a sudden you could have all these books coming out. And Gutenberg could print 300 pages in a day. Some people thought it was the work of black magic, and the devil was involved. So it was kind of scary times. So anyway, that's kind of, anytime there's a great change like that, it's kind of creepy. Well, anyway, I'm just kind of talking here and going along, and I just take my V-tool and gouging these things out. Now, in the past, I carved that block and we saw where the red spots were. So these places where I want the red to show through, I'll have to carve this out so the ink doesn't stick in there. You can do most of this work with a nice V-gouge. For a little point of trivia, if anybody asks you what the difference between a wood block print and a woodcut is, the woodcut is a block print where you use paper on it. And I guess, technically speaking, a block print can also apply to cloth. So a little trivia there to amuse and amaze your friends. A lot of beautiful work was done in the Orient. They were some of the first to really combine wood carving and paper. Beautiful work was done in Japan and still is. And they raised it to a master art form. Some of the oldest ones that are dated have been found in China, dating back to around 700 AD. That's one of the problems. The paper just didn't last as long as wood or parchment. So I'm just kind of going around with my V-tool and just kind of casually outlining all these little spots here. This one here I can just take and just make a cut right in there, kind of like making a chip carving. Now, I'd like to cut away the background on this too. So we can just take our gouge and hollow that away. You don't need to make this real deep. You know, 1/8 of an inch is absolutely the deepest you need to go. And you don't need to take the whole thing down either. This is called a pillow relief carving, believe it or not, where you have the image and then it kind of background tapers up to the surface of the wood, because it has the illusion that an image was just pressed down into some cloth or something and sunk down into it. This new media of woodcuts and woodblock printing just set European art on its ear, too. A lot of great work was done in Germany. And you had artists like Elbrich Dürer doing beautiful etchings, and you still see those reproduced even today. I remember the one of the hair and this kind of ornery looking rabbit with every hair etched into it. And they also did one of the praying hands that you see reproduced quite a bit. Even now, I mean, centuries later, his work is still very popular. And a lot of the other artists were influenced by the art of woodcut and block printing. Hans Holbein, William Blake, the great English artist, Gauguin. Almost all the big-name artists played around with this medium at some point or other. As I said, it was a laser printer of its day. It was the only way they had of reproducing something. And also, it was a way for some people. It opened up a whole new money-making industry. Ben Franklin, when he came to this country, made his fortune certainly in part to having a franchise that he started of printmaking shops. Around Philadelphia and Boston, Eastern Seaboard. You have to kind of think in reverse when you're doing these. And I know that sounds kind of funny, thinking backwards. But what you have to do is when you're doing this and doing your sketch and doing your carving, you have to always be thinking, well, what do I want to show and what do I want to have go blank and not hold the ink. So it takes a little planning when you're doing this. And one of the areas in particular that I had to do some thinking on was making the eyes here. And this is a carving of, as you might have recognized already, of a killer whale or an orca done in the style of the Northwest Coast Native Americans. And this was an animal of great religious significance to them. And they used it as a very popular motif and totem figure. And I'm just going to hollow out the wood from back there. And this will give that kind of white eye patch, or light-colored eye patch that orcas have around or slightly behind their eye. And then for the spot here, I'm just going to take and incise a little line, again, so the ink won't stick in there, around, and then just another one to give the feeling of the outline of the eye. Just a few simple lines. Let's see. This spot up here, too, is one that will be carved away because this is, I want that to go red. One of the things you want to do is make sure your wood is fastened down to the bench when you do this, okay? I think the first time I did anything like this was in one of my art classes in school. And maybe you've all been in these classes. And, the teachers are really doing their best, but they're not really all that sure how to sharpen the tools or the safety rules. And usually what happens is you get a piece of wood or a piece of linoleum glued to some wood, a bunch of dull, rusty old tools, and no way to hold it. And everybody sits there and holds the wood with one hand and is cutting like this, and then they're all filing out the door down to the nurse's office for Band-Aids. It's kind of part of our art education. It's sort of starting at the school of hard knocks. So anyway, don't do it like that. Have your wood fastened down so you can keep both hands on your tool and keep your tools sharp. You want them razor sharp so you get the control in the wood. And it's really safer that way. Let's see, I think I'm going to use another tool here. Some of these micro tools are very handy too, and these are little curved tools. And these are great for getting into some of these areas. So these are just kind of like a little miniature curved gouge. And again, you don't have to take a lot of wood out. All you have to do is just scoop that away. Well, anyway, you get the picture. Just keep doing this, and eventually you're going to have a print or a block that looks something like this one over here. And let me clear the decks a bit. It's kind of interesting because my wife, who's also a woodcarver, took printmaking in college. And that's how she got into woodcarving, as a matter of fact. And her instructor said several times, "Oh, The prints are so-so, but the blocks and the carving are beautiful. Why don't you stick to the carving? So that's and they do. They make a really nice decoration. You get the block and the design etched in there, and well, you'll see it when we ink it. It looks very handsome. Now let's see, what all do we need here? We need some paper too. Okay, this is the design that's been carved out, and you see we didn't have to go very deep with this. So we take some ink. You can buy ink that is oil-based. This particular ink is a water-based ink. That's kind of neat. I haven't used it much before, but I like it. It cleans up a lot easier than the oil-based ink. And then you need a roller, and this is actually called a brayer in printmaking talk. And it's sort of a little rubber roller. You have a glass plate, and you put the ink on there, and you just start rolling this back and forth to make a nice, even puddle. And my daughter, who has done this in art classes, you just roll it back and forth until it makes a little sticky, sticky, sticky sound with a roller on here. You go one way and then come and go another way and approach it from different directions so you get a nice even layer there. Then we take and very carefully roll this onto our drawing that we have carved into the wood. Isn't that neat? Yeah, this is like magic. Now, because I am using different colors here, what I want to be careful of is any of these spots where the roller touches the wood background, I clean that off, because there's always a chance that that'll pick up on the paper, and we want to avoid that. One of the nice things about doing this in wood as opposed to something like linoleum is the little irregularities, imperfections in the wood will show up. And each one has its own flavor. Let me just wipe some of that ink off. What I do with my paper towels. Here we go. No big deal. I'm just going to clean that down. Try to keep that from coming up on the white paper. Now, here comes the tricky part. We'll see if all our colors line up. Now, the easiest way I've found to do this is take and I've poked some holes in here. Actually, I took my whole stack of paper and put my drawing on top and then just poked holes to those register marks that I put on my original drawing. Theoretically, those should line up with the holes in my wood. And then when I very carefully lay this down and use the traditional wooden spoon, the Japanese came up with something made out of bamboo husks called a burin. That's a little handheld job that you can rub on there. And a nice sort of firm, even pressure. Try to get the whole thing here. Let's see what we got. And there is our orca print. Now, as I said, the beauty about this is it's something that you can do again and again. So you want another print? Well, you just take some more ink, roll it on. And this was like magic to those people. It was the first time they had something where you could make reproductions of a page again and again and again. And as I say, it was the computer technology of the 15th century. Now we know what everyone's going to be getting for Christmas this year, huh? And I'll take and clean off my ink that may have spilled over here. Let's try another one, see how our luck holds. This ink dries fairly quickly, but even the water-based ink, you want to let it set overnight. And take another sheet of paper here that I've got the blue and the red on. Line up my push pins. Try to keep my hand out of the ink. It's one of those things you really want to be scrupulously neat and clean at, and I think you have to be a little compulsive too. Line that up. Line that one up. Lay it down gently. Put a nice even pressure on. You know, they need some kind of music for doing this. There must be some kind of old printmaker's polka or jig or something that you use for imprinting the paper. I was reading where the first print shop in North America came over in 1539. An Italian started by the name of Juan Pablo. So even in this country, it's been around for centuries. Okay, take our pins out and pull up our paper, and voila! Isn't that neat? I love this. It's such a great way to create different types of work. Well, hey, give this a try sometime. I think you'll enjoy it. Next week, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and I'll be showing you how to carve a Swiss-style St. Nicholas. In this particular carving, we'll be using a different type of tool and method to detail a face. Hey, I've had a lot of fun being with you today, and until next time, I'm Rick Butz, wishing you happy carving.
Rick Butz has written 2 books entitled Woodcarving Step by Step, Woodland Creatures and Santas. Rick demonstrates and describes through extensive illustrations and photographs how to carve a chipmunk, a river otter, a red fox, an alpine St. Nicholas, an Adirondack Santa and his bear, and a Swiss St. Nicholas. The 2-book collection is available by calling 1-800-950-9648. The price is $29.90 plus shipping and handling.